The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Oshkosh Media, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz, and this evening we're going to be talking about some society issues as they relate to lesbians, gays, queer, transgender people, the whole gamut. So here to help us muddle through some of these confusing and delicate issues is a guest who's been on before, Dr. Liz Cannon. She is the director of the LGBTQ Resource Center at UW Oshkosh, and her assistant, Gabby Thompson. And we were just gabbing with you before we started the show. Gabby has only been here a few months, and so she's learning about the cold and snow. So welcome both to Oshkosh and to Eye on Oshkosh. So we're happy that you're both here. You know, I think that everybody, no matter who they are, either knows someone or works with someone or has someone in their family. Everybody knows someone, I think, who is either gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, queer, whatever the phrase or term is. They may not know that they know them, but they do know them. And I think that's an important fact to get out there, because a lot of people still, in this day and age of 2019, they keep their identity, their sexual orientation, they tend to keep those things private and quiet for a variety of reasons too. So let's maybe talk a little about the reasons why people remain closeted.
So I think, you can go first. Go ahead. I think a prime example for me is I've applied to, or before I got this position, I applied to several other universities, and even my alma mater, I could not apply to any jobs there because there were discrimination laws in place that they will not hire any out and practicing LGBTQ person. One of our res hall directors, been with the university for a long time, was asked to leave the day of that someone asked her.
So it was your alma mater, so they'll take your tuition money. Yeah. That is okay. Your money is fine, but they won't hire you and pay you money.
I mean,
is that kind of the gist of it?
Kind of the gist, but I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And it's not that black and white. I think whenever you get into those issues, you find that there is this big old gray area that a lot of people live in, or organizations or things live in, and it's kind of working through that gray to help people understand and come to a better understanding and come to better anti-discrimination things and diversity and all of those kind of categories.
You were also saying before we started taping that, now were you in the Army, or do you come from an Army family?
Come from very much an Army family.
Okay, so. As did I. We didn't travel. I mean, my father was based in one place, but I was an Army brat too. Still a brat to this day, some people might say. But you know, I guess I kind of lost track of what I was going to ask. So let me ask this. As someone who has traveled around to a lot of places, mm-hmm. what parts of the country do you find to be most discriminatory? You did live in Texas, as did I. I mean, are the southern states typically more discriminatory?
So I don't think I can really make that educated response because I was so young in all the other different places.
Gotcha.
You know, so I was born in Iowa. I lived in Maryland as a kid. So as a kid, you don't know those. You don't realize those things. You know, in Hawaii is its own beautiful place with its own diverse kind of different things. So again, I was in middle school. Yeah. You know, and I think I didn't come out until college and kind of really experience that part of my life until college, and that's when I was in the South. So I think the best way that I can describe it is I don't think I've ever been in a town in America, potentially in the South, that if I was holding my partner's hand, somebody wasn't staring. Mm-hmm. I think that's the best. I think the one place that I remember distinctly that I was like, what is this paradise? When I was in England. I walked down the street with my then partner's hand. Nobody batted an eye.
Yeah, they seem to be very more accepting, progressive, forward-thinking, whatever you want to call it, in England. And France, I've heard France. Yeah. Why is that? I mean, do you have an idea on that, Liz? Since you're the professor.
Yeah, it's a really, you know, I mean, they've had a civilization and culture for more years than we have, if we think about it that way. Mm-hmm. We hope we're always moving in a forward direction. Yeah. With little backtracks. Yeah. So, but not my field, and that's just a hypothetical.
Yeah. You know, so many countries are further ahead than the United States on some of these issues. Mm-hmm. Even, I was reading up in preparation for the show here, even Mexico has more liberal laws than we do when it comes to homosexuality and gender identity and that kind of thing. Now, it did say that, you know, it may not be duly enforced the way it should, but the laws are there purportedly to protect people, and they're more strict laws than us. But
I did a study abroad to Germany last spring, and we were looking at resistant movements, and part of what we were looking at was LGBTQ, and it became very clear that Berlin is like one of the most, probably the most progressive city I've ever been in.
Wow, really?
And in the state of Berlin, they've made a law that anybody who works with children has to be educated on LGBTQ. And so we were visiting one of the education centers that provided that type of education. But the flip side is then we also traveled down to Munich, and the southern Germany is a lot more conservative than northern Germany. And talking to an LGBTQ organization there, they're like, yeah, we dream about stuff like that, but it's not happening here.
Yeah. So. But I find that so fascinating about Berlin.
Yeah.
You know, especially considering where they were at so many years ago in our world's history. Right. You know, and see what happens when you take down walls. Yes. You know, when you take down walls, things like this happen. They're progressive and they're good for people. Yeah. So, and we were just talking, I was talking with a crew member just before the show started about the Berlin Wall. Yeah. And, you know, taking down walls in general rather than putting up walls, whether they're real walls with concrete or whatever, or they're just walls because someone doesn't want to accept someone else. So, Liz, you are the executive, or you're the director of the LGBTQ Resource Center, as I mentioned, and we have that website address that we're going to be putting up throughout the show. But I think one of the best places to start is maybe talk about what the center is. You know, tell us a little history, why it started, when it started, where it's located, all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's exciting because we are celebrating our 10th year of existence this year, and started back in 2008. And it's interesting because most universities are going to have their LGBTQ faculty, students, staff talking about wanting a center. And there's usually a variety of different reasons when it actually comes to a point where it happens. And so on our campus, I've been there for 21 years now, and I would say in at least 18 years ago, we were talking about this would be a good thing for Oshkosh. But one of the things you always think about is knowing that you're in a situation where there isn't a lot of resources. Are you going to sort of ask for a center when there's not really all that much money to put behind it and start small? And then when you succeed, when you're small, it's a lot harder for them to then give you more money.
Sure. Yeah.
Or do you wait until you realize there's enough resources? But then at a certain point you look and say, no, we have to start.
Yeah.
And sort of the thing that really motivated us is that if you remember back in the political election in 2008, we were talking about changing the Wisconsin Constitution to define marriage between a man and a woman. And we had suggested to the administration that this is going to cause a climate problem on our campus as people are debating this. And we didn't really do anything proactive, even though we had talked about that, to deal with that situation. And sure enough, not only we were seeing a lot of verbal harassment on campus, we were even seeing a little bit of physical harassment, and one of our faculty members had been physically harassed. And then when the administration said, we need to do something. So at that point, we knew it was time to put the proposal through for the Resource Center. And it's true, we didn't get what we hoped for. We got a small space, but at least we got a space.
Yep.
We got a space that its original use was a closet. And so
How appropriate, right?
that was really nice. But we got a space. And the director position was a half-time position. And so, but we were given a budget, and we decided that we were going to make a difference. And so from the beginning, we saw this center as an educational force to change climate on campus and sort of really educate everybody about LGBTQ IA+ culture. And of course, I say LGBTQ IA+ really easily now, and 10 years ago I wouldn't have. At that point, we still would have said LGBTQ, but we weren't thinking about intersex. We were not thinking about asexuality at that particular point. But we knew that type of education was very important. And we also knew we wanted to have a space that really looked at what are the unique needs of our LGBTQ students, and to have a space for them to physically come to, as well as develop services that would serve their needs. And so we've always had that sort of dual purpose of both education and supporting students, specific students.
I've been in the center, I think, one time, and to me it just seemed like a very relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah.
And this is a difficult enough issue as it is for a lot of people, so you want them to be in an atmosphere where it's calm, it's safe,
Yes.
and they can just be whoever they are.
And we should say we now do have a much larger, beautiful space. And the director position now is 75% rather than 50.
Okay.
So
baby steps.
yeah.
And those are always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you said something, and I jotted it down here. In addition to LGBTQ, you're adding on, did I hear you right, AI+?
IA.
IA, okay, I've switched them. IA+. Tell me, that's a new one on me. Tell me what that is.
So, we never quite get, there's so many identities that are involved in our community. And two that we've really talked about more recently, one is intersex. So we recognize that, human beings are these wonderful, complicated entities that just don't fit nicely into binary categories. We just don't. And so that we really actually have 3 sex categories, and one is intersex. And so people who are intersexed are have combinations of all of the factors of our bodies that make up our sex. I mean, not just external genitalia, but reproductive organs, hormones, chromosomes, secondary sex characteristics. And, you know, people talk about statistics. Some people say 1 in 500, 1 in 2,000. Most are saying about 1 in 1,500 people are born intersex. And that's about the same statistic as the number of redheads in the world.
No. Okay, so science and biology were never strong suits of mine. So when we start talking about DNA and chromosomes and all that, I start feeling very insecure because I don't understand it. So if someone were, well, I am going to ask, okay, so give us the layman's definition of what intersex means.
So it used to be the idea that somebody has ambiguous genitalia or a combination of both genitalia. An older term that some people may know is hermaphrodite, not a term we use anymore.
Okay.
And it used to be seen as sort of a, quote, birth defect that has to be fixed.
Okay.
But we've since found that these types of surgeries on babies are very, very problematic. And it may be that the individual later in their lives may choose to have surgeries, but that becomes a whole different ballpark. That becomes that individual's choice.
Okay, so that, now I understand what that is.
Yeah.
And what does the A plus then stand
A couple things
for?
I want to go back with intersex.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Some people who are intersex don't find out until either puberty or maybe adult if they try to reproduce. And a lot of people who are intersex, because we're all assigned a sex at birth, and that sex is assigned by simply looking at our external genitalia. And that's why we always talk about what your sex assigned at birth is.
Right.
And so a lot of intersex people were assigned female or male, and they may all through their life actually identify as that, even though biologically there could be reasons or conditions, so I don't like that word, where they're actually
Right,
intersex.
yeah.
And I think it's important to say that there are a lot of people who are intersex who see themselves as part of this community, and there are a lot of people who are intersex who don't. And so some may not appreciate the LGBTQIA+, but I like to be as inclusive as possible
Sure,
for those
absolutely.
who would like to be
and I
involved.
can see where something like that would be really confusing. I mean, a lot of these issues, I'm still trying to grapple with transgender issues and transgender people. And I think a lot of society is, you know, it
Yeah.
presents a lot of social issues and questions and
Maybe.
confusion, you know.
They're just
and
all people.
so, you know, then we've got this identity now
Yeah.
that people may not even know that they have reproductive organs that don't match with the identity they were given at birth. It's confusing just to say it, much less try and live it.
But I think the only reason it's confusing is because we're taught that everybody is one binary or another, whether it's our binary in sex or it's our binary in gender. And, you know, I think the earlier we start teaching that, again, human beings are so much more complex.
Yeah.
And see it as instead of approaching it cautiously with confusion, seeing this as, oh, wow, actually, that's really cool.
Yeah, well, you know, and it's not even, Liz, that we're taught that at birth or at a young age and assigned a sex at birth, but no matter what you do in this world, if you're taking a poll, if you're applying for a job, it says male, female, or MF. There aren't other boxes to check.
But there should be.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases now, they're starting to be.
Okay. Can you give me an example of like where we would see some of these other?
California.
Well, here in Wisconsin,
so sorry, go ahead.
even at the university, our admissions form, when it asks for gender, includes transgender.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's not quite where I would like it to be, but definitely moving forward. A lot of health intake forms are starting to recognize that we can't just look at male, female, especially because those are sex terms and not gender terms. And so we're seeing a lot. And so it's you know, educating people on, you know, what is the appropriate language to use. And can we start using this? And the more people see it, the more it's going to be like, oh, yeah, I get it. It's okay. And we're making headway.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good to see. And you're right. There should be more options available. And I think one of the reasons why discussions are sometimes difficult to have about issues like this is, and I feel this way myself. I'll admit it. You're trying so carefully not to offend someone.
Yeah.
And so you're having to really think about what you want to say. You're having to, in some cases, parse your words so that you're not offending someone. We're worrying too much about political correctness. And I realize you have to have a certain amount of political correctness. But I think if you're asking questions and being sincere and trying to elicit information from someone else, I don't think that we should be stumbling over our words and that's at least that's the point I'm trying to get to, because we've done a few of these shows now, and you've seen me, I think, stumble over a few things because I didn't get it, and I was trying so hard.
Yep.
And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to ask the sincere type question and hope that nobody backhands me. But it is confusing, and I guess that's a good reason why there's centers like yours.
Yeah.
Because it helps to unravel some of the confusion.
Yeah.
So where is the center located on campus?
It's located in the Campus Center for Equity and Diversity.
Okay.
And that is now on the corner of sort of Elmwood and Irving.
That's in the old
The old Newman Center.
the old Newman Center.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you have more space there than what you had when I was there last time.
Yes.
Because I was there about,
Well,
was it a year ago or 2 years ago?
no, because we've had our new space for, I'm not going to remember, I think 3 or 4 years by now. So you would have seen our new space.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
it is a nice space.
Yes.
It's
It is.
much better than a closet.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and there's space to move about and to work and relax. And you've got a library there
Yep.
of a lot of different resources.
Yep.
And are there computers there?
Yep.
Okay. And so folks can come in and do what, research or?
Study use. So there's 2 computers with 2 screens that are both available for students.
Okay.
They're available for students, but you need a login to actually get on them.
Okay.
And so if a community member came in, we would help them.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's because it's on campus and is a campus-funded center, people in Oshkosh can still use it if they want to.
Yes.
They would just, would you recommend that they call first, or can they just drop in?
They can just drop in.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And what are your hours?
So in the spring semester, it'll be 7:45 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And during the lunch hour, there might be a small break depending on her schedule or my schedule. But those are our general hours, Monday through Friday.
Okay. And that's for the spring semester?
Yes.
And of course, that leads into summer. And are you guys open in the summer, or are you closed, or?
We're open, but now that I have a 9-month assistant instead of a 12-month assistant, and in the summer I work 30 hours a week, being 75, because my other 25% is teaching.
Okay.
So can't keep it open the same hours.
Okay.
So there'll be-
So limited hours perhaps in the summer?
Yes.
Yep.
And do you put your hours on the website? I'm
Yes.
assuming that you do. So probably a good thing if you are thinking of going by there to just check out the website and see what the hours are for the given time that you're thinking about going. And we should probably be putting that there it is. Ask and we shall receive. So there it is. I guess let's talk a little bit about, the vision and the mission statement that you guys developed in order to get the center going.
I have to see if I can remember it.
I have it on the back if you can read small print.
I mean, I know Because, I mean, the purpose of it is basically to create understanding and community for all genders and all sexualities. Because we are also on a university campus, we also see ourselves advocating academic success for all students. And I mean, one of the things that's important to remember is that every student who comes to Oshkosh needs to be educated about the LGBTQIA+ community. Because as you said, they're going to be working with people who are, or they're going to have students in their classrooms, or clients who are. And so it becomes so important that that education happens.
Sure.
And I mean, the type of education we do sort of an hour and a half programs, again, open to the community, anybody can come. But one of the things we also look at is we're trying to really talk to faculty and making sure that the topics are included in course material.
Okay.
And we've gotten to the point where I've actually begun an LGBTQ studies certificate. So it's a 15-credit program with classes that look specifically at LGBTQ topics.
Wow.
So for example, I teach the introduction to LGBTQ studies. I teach queer theory, queer lives through memoir. I'm developing a course on two-spirit lives. We have trans and non-binary lives. We have queer politics and policy.
What's Two-Spirit for people that might not know what that is?
Thank you, because I was going to ask that.
Two-Spirit is a specific identity for Native and Indigenous folk.
Okay.
And those who use the term Two-Spirit are ones who have a strong connection to their cultural heritage. So, because there are a lot of Native Indigenous folk who still use LGBTQ identities.
Okay.
So it is an identity that you can only use if you're Native or Indigenous.
Okay.
And
All
so,
right. All right. So we were talking, and then I got sidetracked, about the IA+.
we didn't get to the A.
We didn't get to the A or the plus.
So A is for asexual.
Okay. I had a feeling that was
Yes.
what it was.
Yes,
So, okay.
yes. And so, again, not something that's caused by trauma, not something that can be fixed by therapy. It's just that some people generally actually do not experience sexual attraction. They can have a sex drive. They may actually physically enjoy sex. Some don't. Some are sex repulsed. But I have a student who identifies as asexual used this analogy. So looking at our hunger drive. We've all had that experience where we're hungry, right? And like say you go to the fridge, you open up and you're looking in, nothing looks good. You are not attracted to anything. The same for people who are asexual. They may have a sex drive, but it's not directed at any person.
Okay.
There's no attraction that happens.
I like that analogy there.
It's a good
because
analogy.
It really is.
Yep, I have to give Devin Matznick credit for.
Yeah, that's a good one. That
Yeah.
probably is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah.
I think. And so it's not asexual people are not just people who are not having sex, who have decided, okay, we're just going to not have sex anymore.
That's celibacy.
Yeah, celibacy.
Exactly.
Yep. So it's just asexuality is just when they don't have any attraction to
Sexual
anyone.
attraction.
Sexual attraction.
Because it's interesting because the asexual community has taught us that there are a lot of different ways that we are attracted to other people. And so, for example, another attraction we have is romantic attraction. It's like, I really want to date that person. I want to spend all my time with, I want to hang out. They're just cool. That kind of romantic connection. And so, but there are also people who are aromantic, who don't experience that.
Wow, now I'm really getting confused.
It's okay.
Because here's how you talk about romantic type things. They just want to hang out. Isn't that the definition of a friend?
It's more than that. It's somebody you want to have a relationship with, a partnership with.
But just no sex.
And let's say your partner is sexual, what we call allosexual. And it could be that you negotiate with your partner. It's like, yeah, I know you're really into it. I could take it or leave it, but I'm okay. And so this Friday, yeah, we can have sex, but next Friday, let's go to a movie.
Okay.
So, any successful relationship is based on communication, right? And
True.
so-
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not that only asexual people experience aromanticism. There are some people who are allosexual who are also aromantic.
What's allosexual? Wow, that's another A. You should say IAA plus.
Well, that's why the plus is there.
That's why the
Yeah,
plus
yeah.
is there.
So allosexual.
Yeah.
ALO
Yep.
sexual?
And allo, the prefix means other, and so it's those whose sexual attraction is directed at an other. And so it's people who experience sexual attraction. And I have a really good friend who likes to remember it because it's ALL. So allosexual people want all the sex. So
It's a spectrum. If you
Yeah.
think of
between
it,
asexual and allosexual.
sexual, and the same with aromantic and alloromantic.
Well,
So
I feel so dumb right now.
No.
I mean,
2.5
this
months.
It's like, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
2.5 months ago, I didn't know any of this,
Yeah.
and I am sitting in a position of LGBTQ.
Kind of having to know.
Yeah, kind of having to know. And as a member of the community, as somebody who's been loud and proud and active and visible and things, these are all things that I'm learning. And I think that's one of the important aspects is just continuing to open your mind to learn. Like she said, humans are just so interesting and complex.
Yeah.
So take the time to get to know humans. And be proud, and be proud of other people for living their truth. And, I believe that knowledge defeats ignorance. And if we can defeat ignorance, you're going to have better relationships down the road. So
Yeah.
it's all about learning.
Yeah. Would it not be better, and I know this is more of a politically probably driven question, but would it not be better in some cases if we just didn't ask someone's sexual identity?
No.
No.
And big.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Go
want to
for
go.
it.
Okay.
I mean, I understand all of society couldn't function that way, but from where I'm sitting, if you don't ask, then people can't, for example, getting into a school. We've all heard about how African American people were given extra points to be able to get into schools there for a while until that kind of became, the law changed and that became sort of outlawed. But if people don't know what your sexuality or identity is, then they can't discriminate against you.
Well, the other thing that you have to remember is, you started the conversation by sort of suggesting what are the reasons that people aren't being visible, right? And who are. But we have to also remember that there are many people in our community who cannot hide their identity. And a lot of it has to do with what's connected with gender. And if they're gender nonconforming, and even people who aren't in our community but are perceived to be gender nonconforming, they're experiencing harassment, microaggressions, physical violence.
That's true. I hadn't thought about the people who can't hide certain things.
And the other thing is that as human beings who are heterosexual, so many ways in which they announce their sexuality.
Oh, absolutely.
And so to say that, we're not going to actually ask.
I think, and I just think the biggest thing, I am one of the biggest proponents of visibility matters. It's so crucial and imperative. But the best example that I can give is you say don't ask, you don't need to show it, I don't care. What happens to the 10-year-old or the middle school teen whose family is saying that whatever their sexuality identity is wrong and is having suicidal thoughts and is going down that path? What happens to them when we say we're not going to be visible? But they hear that Haley Kiyoko is singing with a pride flag. They hear that the head of Panic at the Disco, so I'm naming popular pop culture bands.
Yes, and that's why I have no idea who you're talking about.
Right, neither do I.
That the two moms and the Fosters in the Freeform family, you know, they see those elements of hope.
Yeah.
Visibility brings hope to those that physically cannot be visible due to their environments.
It goes back to Harvey Milk. You've got to give them hope.
Yes.
And Harvey Milk, for people who don't know, just tell people. I think most people have heard of him, but
Yes.
some people may not have. So, you know, in San Francisco
Yes.
is where Harvey Milk was. Why don't you tell folks who he was?
He was the first out elective official to city council,
Yes.
as I recall.
Yep.
Who then was assassinated by one of his fellow city council members who
Yeah.
had.
Right in the City Hall building, as I
Yes.
recall.
And the mayor was also assassinated at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a horrible day
Horrible.
for San Francisco.
For the United States.
Yes, for the community, the greater community at
Yeah.
large, but certainly for
Yeah.
San Francisco, for the council, for the city, and
Yeah.
then of course, like we said, it does expand beyond that.
Yeah.
But Sean Penn, did he play Harvey Milk?
Yes. In the
he won
popular film.
Did he
think
win
he
an
did.
Oscar?
Do you know?
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
If you have a chance to, you know, find it on YouTube. Sometimes you can find movies on YouTube or Netflix or wherever. It's I forget what the exact title was, but if you just say
think it's just
Harvey
Milk.
movies
Milk.
about
I think it's
Harvey
just Milk.
It was Milk. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad,
Yes.
and yet from some of these things that are just horrible, come greater things.
Yes.
You know, he didn't die in vain. So,
Oh, and such an amazing man, and put so much of his work into making a difference. And so, yes, it's a tragic ending, but it's such an inspirational film about what it is to live in the world, what it is to make a difference. And so, in that way, it's just inspirational.
yeah. It's like, you know, other great people in this country who have been assassinated. You know, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
You know, again, forward-thinking people, great minds, and somebody just wanted to stifle them
Yeah.
and just shut them up permanently.
Yeah. And then we think about the number in our community who are being murdered, and they're not famous, but again, such creative people, such wonderful people who have lived these amazing lives, and being especially trans women of color, and simply being murdered.
Yeah. I want to talk about what some of the resources are. We talked a little bit about the library in your center. What are some of the other resources that people can take advantage of?
So we have a variety. So I'm blanking on everything that we do. Wow. So we have gender outfitters. So students that are looking to purchase or use clothing like a binder or specific underwear or specific other clothing to help with their gender expression can come to the center and ask for those items.
And we often will buy the first one for them. We have a fund that people can donate to if they would like. Or if somebody is living in a situation where they can't have it sent to their house, they can have it sent to the resource center.
Okay, all right.
And they can pick it up from there. The division, and it's housed in, so our division does the food pantry, and it's housed in the LGBTQ Resource Center.
Okay.
But students that have food insecurities or looking to get food can order food once a month, 4 times a semester through the Oshkosh area food pantry.
Okay.
And they fill out the order form and it gets delivered to the center and they just pick it up.
Okay.
They have
marvelous.
to show their student ID.
Sure.
We don't just give it to anybody that's saying, I ordered this.
Yeah. So now I have a question about that, Gabby, because what stops them from just going directly to the food pantry and getting it themselves?
Transportation.
Okay.
It could be a big one. Also, I feel like there's a variety of stops, but it's also just so simple. You know, if you are a student on campus, say you just got done with a class and you're about to head home, you don't need to make another stop. You're on campus, go pick it up, and then go home. It's really the simplest thing you can do for students.
So it's a convenience, really.
And
Yes, I think there's still, I think we have a lot of shame in our country about being food insecure. And I think that's part of it too,
Okay.
to get oneself to go to a food pantry.
Sure,
In
okay.
in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good point.
Yeah. We also have a supplies
I was
closet.
about to go.
And this is something that is completely run by the division and the resource center. And we, once a year, will do a drive for things like, we have toothpaste and toothbrush, we have deodorant, we have shampoo, we have
Menstrual
towels.
product. I think there are menstrual
there's
products.
menstrual products. So, and again, once a month the student can fill out a form and get 10 items from
And
the
are these
supplies
things
closet.
that, then, I mean, yes, you have a budget, but you, as I'm sure, as any nonprofit, you need money, you need resources donated to you. Are these supplies things that people could provide to you?
Yes. And I was just talking to Gabby that we probably need to do another drive this spring.
Okay.
We're starting to get a little low on some of the things.
So there's something, if you are listening on the radio or you're watching this on television or on YouTube, you know, watch for that on their website to see when their next supply drive is coming up. And, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot to go buy some gloves or
Some deodorant,
deodorant
shampoo.
or chapstick.
We just gave out our last towel today.
Yeah, towels.
Okay, all right. And, you know, and you can pick things up at the dollar store. You can get a lot of stuff at the dollar store for not much money,
Right.
you know. And when I say the dollar store, I'm not promoting the dollar store. I'm talking about dollar stores in general where you can go in and things are like $1 or
Right.
just a little bit more. So, because I can't be promoting stores or products.
Yeah.
So
There's
we
also
don't-
been dentists in the area who have donated toothbrushes and
Oh, how
toothpaste
great.
and
Floss
so
and
that's
mouth-
really
Mouthwash.
yeah.
Do you ever, when people do that, like dentists and so forth, do you recognize them on your website or anything, or do they, or would that be a monumental task?
We used to have what we called a rainbow wall. And anytime, this is when in our old center, anytime somebody donated money, a book, an item, they would get a brick on our wall. And when we moved to our new space, we never actually moved our wall. And so, but
Yeah,
it's definitely something for us to think about again.
Now, there's a good wall. There's a
Yes,
good
yes.
wall.
yes, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely a good brick wall.
Yeah.
There we go.
Kind of.
But, you know, and then there are some of us who we don't care if we get the accolades.
Right.
You know, we just want to do something
Yeah.
because we're doing something nice. And it makes us feel good about helping out a fellow human being, you know. One of the...
I just
Oh,
want
go
to
ahead.
emphasize, because
Yep.
a lot of people then want to donate food, and we can't take food donations.
Oh, you can't?
No, because we do everything through the Oshkosh area food pantry.
Okay. So they don't want like conflicting stuff? Is that kind of the
Right,
deal? Okay.
right,
So
right.
no foodstuffs, no
Right.
food products, no foodstuffs of any kind, but other kinds of supplies.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right. One of the things that you've mentioned is the word queer a number of times
It's
here.
the best word.
And that, well, I don't know. You know, I think a different, I come from a slightly different time, not so much different from yours. We're about the same age.
Yeah.
Where the word queer was used in a very not so nice
No.
way. You know,
Very
it was,
damaging.
it was,
Yep.
it was
Yep.
damaging.
Yep.
It was really meant to tear someone down.
Yeah.
And I know the gay community would call themselves queer
Yeah.
and things like that, just like the African American community would use the N-word amongst themselves, but other people couldn't use it.
No.
It's one of those weird kind of things. But in general, I have always kind of viewed that word as a word you just don't say because it's just not right.
Yep.
But tell us why you think it's such a great word.
Well, I'm actually going to pass that off to her.
All right.
It's her favorite,
I
one
know.
of her
Okay,
favorite
okay.
words.
I love this word.
So I'm
All
going to
right.
give her that privilege.
because
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there like me who think
Oh, yeah.
this is not a good word. Why are you using that word?
Right.
And even though they're very popular television show, Queer as Folk.
Right.
You know, is that
Queer
still
Eye.
on?
Queer Eye for
We're
the-
Queer Eye
Yep.
for the straight guy.
but Queer as Folk
Oh,
was
well,
an
it's
older
just
one.
Queer Eye
Yep.
now.
Oh,
so
now it's
there's,
just Queer Eye, but
There's
Yeah.
a show on Netflix with 4 or 5 queer men that redo people's lives, or like make over people's lives.
so it's the same show, just a different title.
Kind of like a reboot.
Yeah.
reboot, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Queer
doing
as
really
Folk,
great
that
things.
was,
Yep.
I don't know if that's still in production or not.
don't think
but
so.
that was a very
Yeah.
highly acclaimed
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
And Sharon Gless was in it. I don't know the other people, but, you know, I loved Cagney and Lacey. I'm
Yeah.
dating myself now. So,
Yeah.
but that's okay, because you dated yourself with the bands and
That's
so forth.
true.
Yeah.
So I'm entitled to do this one. You know, Sharon Gless was in there, and I just thought she
Oh,
was
yeah.
great, and she's such a wonderful actress.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that she did in recent years was Queer as Folk.
Right.
But you know, tell me why that word is such a great word.
So, this is a word that actually has a meaning in the English language, which means not the norm. And as I explain it, if you put the norm up here and not the norm down here, we've got a problem and you can't use the word. You put it here and we have a conversation, right? And queer has been used as, in a way, as an action word, as a way to show that there are a lot of different ways that humans are that aren't considered the norm, whether it has to do with sex, gender, sexuality. And it usually, I mean, if you want a new term, we talk about what's heteronormativity, and queer is what sort of deconstructs that idea. And so a lot of people see a lot of positive energy in this word, to the point where there are a lot of us who use it as an identity term. And so I identify as bisexual. I also identify as queer.
Okay.
And most of us who use the identity term queer, in our lives, we see that we have to act for the community. There has to be that sort of action component to how we operate.
Okay, that all makes sense.
And the other reason people use the word queer is that there's some, you know, the way our identity labels are, it's just like we have to define exactly how our sexuality or our gender is. I mean, there are a lot of gender terms as well as there are a lot of sexual orientation terms.
Sure.
And a lot of people identify as queer because they don't want to pinpoint, you know, exactly. And maybe they can't. Maybe they live on a continuum in which
Yeah.
they don't. And so queer becomes sort of a
Umbrella.
broader term. And it's also an umbrella term, because how much easier is it to say the queer community instead of the LGBTQIA plus community?
Right. Yeah.
And we can't say the gay community because gay
leaves
just
people
means,
out.
it does, it just really means, I mean, technically it means gay men. There are a lot of lesbians or women who use the identity term gay as well, or use both.
Yes. Yes.
But it leaves out a whole group of individuals.
I just think it's a word that we took back.
That's
You
true
know,
too.
I just believe, like,
I'm sorry, but-
that we took back.
we took back. Okay.
That part, I would not say my generation, maybe 1 or 2 before mine, that decided that we're no longer going to let people use this word against us. Like, this is our word, and you can't make a nuisance out of it. And so I definitely understand that older generations still kind of cringe kind of when they
You
hear.
bristle when you hear it.
Yeah, and hear that word. And I think it's, again, this blending of older and newer generations working together as one and as a community.
Okay.
You know, and just talking and having these conversations of saying, like, hey, you know what? Queer can be a really dope word.
Yeah.
Like, let me know, like, let me hear your experience, like, let me
Yeah.
hear other people's experiences.
Yeah.
And let me learn from you and why you feel this way. But then also let me tell you why I think this is such a cool word.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's different from other words. And again, it's different because it being queer is not being bad, it's just being different.
Not
It's
the norm.
Yeah. But there are, as you said, the N word, I would add the F word to that, where their definitions have always been
Yeah.
very, very problematic and hurtful, and are words that we're not reclaiming.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay. I'm trying. Since the very first time you were on the show, Liz, I've been trying to grasp this word and embrace it. Yeah, I'm not quite there yet.
and it doesn't mean
But-
it's a word that you have to use.
Right. Yeah, because see, I come from the generation where you don't use it.
Yeah.
It's a disrespectful
Yeah.
term. And but I'm trying. I'm
Yeah.
working on it.
Cool.
I'm trying.
It's funny, my mother, so who's beyond accepting. Like, parents, wonderful. I have the dream team parents.
That's
My parents
good.
watch this. Thanks, parents. But, you know, sometimes when I use that word around my mother, she also kind of has that gut, like, oh, are we allowed to use that word? And again,
Yeah,
it's always
yeah.
that conversation between the two of us, between our family of, you know, this is where things are going, and kind of building that understanding of me truly listening to why she feels that way, and then
Yeah.
her in
Yeah.
return
Yeah.
listening to why I.
It's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
It is.
There's no question. It's I think a great conversation starter, especially between two generations. You know, we're down to about 10 minutes, and I want to talk about. I can't believe this time has flown by. Want to talk about some of your spring programming. You mentioned earlier, Liz, that it's your 10th anniversary.
Yes.
Are you guys doing anything special?
We are.
Okay.
We
Tell
are.
us about that.
We're ending the year with an exhibit in the Steinhibler Art Gallery in the Reeve Union,
Okay.
where we're sort of looking at our 10-year retrospective. And we still have a lot of work to put together exactly what's going to be in that exhibit, but it's going to be the first 2 weeks in May.
Okay.
I think it's the
6th
first
through
two-
the 17th.
6th through the 17th.
May 6th through the 17th.
Yes.
Okay.
And-
And all of this will be on your website?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
under
Yes.
events.
Yes.
All right, under events,
Yeah.
okay. So that's exciting. Will there be a cost for that? Or
No.
Okay,
No.
so people can just go to the Reeve
Yes.
and see it.
Yes.
The,
We'll have an opening
Yes, so the opening
Monday.
is the 6th that evening, and that's the main opening, and there'll be announcements and things like
Yeah.
that people can be aware of.
okay, wonderful. And then, of course, you know, spring programming, spring can't come soon enough.
No,
I mean,
it's so cold outside.
I feel so badly for you because you've only been here a few months, and
I got
this is-
here like right when the cold started,
Uh-huh.
so people keep telling me that it's
Oh,
beautiful.
honey,
It's
trust me, it's
beautiful.
going to get a lot worse. It's going to get a
But
lot more cold.
no, so some of our spring programming. So I briefly talked about visibility matters, and that's what our kind of spring programming is focused on. So we're doing 3 different programs focusing on visibility. So February we're focusing on queer love stories,
Okay.
and so we're having a few queer couples come and play a newlywed game kind of thing to just show that people A, can love differently and be successful in those relationships, and then B, show queer students and that look at these successful, you know, queer relationships of vast identities and sexualities, like bi, pan, poly, trans, everyone in between. So I'm really excited for that.
Okay.
And then
Though we're going to, with the caveat that not everybody has to be in relationship to succeed in this
Yeah.
world.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was
exactly.
my-
Exactly.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But they have to be in a relationship to play the game.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. And so then we are looking, our next panel is looking at gay and lesbian privilege. So looking at privilege within the queer community and kind of how that intertwines. We have dramatic readings as well that we're doing. We do a brown bag lunch with someone that comes and speaks to our faculty and staff.
So Allison Welch in the art department is doing our brown bag and is going to be talking about queer art.
Okay.
And I have the privilege of talking to athletes about athletic visibility. So I was a Division I college track and field and cross country athlete, and had a lot of different things happen because I was a queer athlete in the area that I was in. So I have a privilege of getting to do that, and we're going to hopefully find some other queer athletes to come join me and talk about those. And that's just kind of a summary. We do other really...
Transaction Week?
Oh, wow. Our big one's Transaction Week. Week specifically looking at transgender panels and discussions, and T-Safe, and Ally March is another one of our big ones.
Okay. And when is that, the Ally March?
April 17th.
April 17th, okay.
The big speaker we're bringing in this spring is Jack Stringer, who is a non-binary, two-spirit activist, and bringing in for Transaction Week. And then we also have a transaction workshop that will happen on Saturday 7th, whatever they said, April. And the audience for that is trans and non-binary folk. So allies can come if they're really, really strong allies, remembering this is in a space for their voice. And it's the third time we've done this workshop.
Okay.
And so I'm very excited about that.
All right. And, earlier we were talking about Harvey Milk. And in the past, I know you've always had a Harvey Milk commemorative dinner.
Yes.
And this year, you said it's not going to be the usual time. It's going to be in October?
Yes, yes. And so it's one of our major fundraisers that we do. And the money goes for scholarships for LGBTQIA+ students. And the general consensus is people wanted it on a Saturday. And so last year, we put it on a Saturday in June because May, which is Harvey Milk's birthday, and that's when we usually had it, was just booked. Okay. But we found we got a lot of less people because it's summer.
Yeah. It's tough finding people to come to events. I don't care when you schedule it, there's always something else going on that pulls people away.
Yeah.
And yet because I've run into this planning things for groups that I'm involved in.
Yep.
And we just discussed this Tuesday night, and I said, you know what? At some point, we just have to pick a date, and people who are really committed to the cause, they will come.
Well, we got a lot more in May than we got in June. And so we're going to try it in October for Coming Out Month.
Okay, all right.
And can't solidify the date until we can make the room reservation on March 1st.
On March 1st.
Okay, all right. Have I missed anything? Oh, very quickly. The Rainbow Alliance for Hope, and now you've got a second group?
There are two student organizations on campus. And again, one is Rainbow Alliance for Hope, and they meet Monday nights we're trying a new time, 7 p.m. The other one is called Q+ Unity, and they meet on Wednesdays at 5:30. And the difference between the groups is Rainbow Alliance for Hope is the older group, has been on campus for 21 years. And this organization is really looking at advocacy, education, usually have some kind of program that they do during their meetings, and usually look to develop really educational conversations.
Okay.
And Q+ Unity is more of a social group.
Okay.
And they may have an activity, a lot of them do crafts. It's just a place for them, for students to get together and just relax and be.
Okay, wonderful. And all of this can be found on their website. And with that, I have to thank you both for being here.
Course,
the hour
thank you.
flew by, but
That's what happens when you're having fun.
I know. And I think we get a lot of good information out there. My head is swimming as I try to absorb some of the stuff we talked about.
Then it was a success.
It was a success. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
luck
you,
with all
Cheryl.
the spring events that you have coming up this spring. And thank you to the crew, and thank you to you. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.